Yes, I did start a short while ago, but I didn't have the screen loaded, so you couldn't see what I was doing. Yeah, very proud of myself. Welcome back, though. It's good to see you all. I can't believe I didn't look into comments for 13 minutes. I'm so proud. Okay, well, welcome back. Can't believe I did that. Okay, well, you're all here now. Let's actually talk about Bitcoin. Again, I'm just going to briefly show you what I was talking about previously because I'm a little embarrassed. So let's talk about the previous crash pattern. Let's go back to the weekly chart. Welcome, though. Thank you. Beautiful. Okay. So where did the previous crash pattern end, my friends? Right on top of the weekly 200 moving average. And let's actually do a 50 distribution. That's perfect as an implication of our current downward trend. Okay, this blue band right here is going to be the expansion of the short-term distribution. So this downward expansion here, right, that blue line is what we're currently seeing. And we're going to snap back to the present time. Okay, beautiful. This expansion of the blue band here is the downward trend. Okay, so we have that downward trend in the previous crash pattern and the current crash pattern. We were not technically in a downward trend until the expansion from this perspective, right? Since as long as we're inside the 50 band, it just counts as healthy correction from overexpansion, right? Since this was overexpanded, we return to the center of the data and we trade laterally as defined by the band. Then as soon as we're below the band, that downward expansion reignites downward trending until we hit an institutional benchmark. The institutional benchmark we hit is the weekly 200 moving average, okay? We find hard support directly on this benchmark. And I really want to point this out because it's beautiful. We run up with this wick here and retest the downward trend. That wick right there snaps us back down until we actually have our small pivot for mean reversion. When we hit that pivot, we do revert to the center of data and trade laterally as defined by the band, which also retests the weekly 200 mean before a new bout of upward trending happens because mass is significantly reduced enough to actually enable a new upward trend. So what does that mean in our current time frame? I'm glad you asked. So here's the prediction, folks. We're going to snap back up and retest the downward expanding 50 band. When we retest it, we will be rejected, settle directly on top of the weekly 200. When we actually re-enter the band, we will revert to the 50 mean, which will come down and meet price action. We'll have a rejection from the 50 mean, find support on the 200 moving average once more. And then as this band compresses down here, we will trade laterally as defined by the band. And as soon as we have a new bout of expansion around this area, right, as soon as we're above the 50 band, the new upward expansion will enable new upward trending. So as far as long-term opportunities to buy into Bitcoin, right now is an excellent opportunity. Now this implies we actually find support on the weekly 200 moving average, right? Because we are still technically defined in a downward trend by the 50 band on the weekly chart. Well, it's still a downward trend. You are betting against the trend. However, we need to look at historical data and institutional benchmarks, which imply support, okay? We need to retest the 50 band for the rejection. And we know what that looks like on shorter term time frames, which is really nice. So if you go to BTC USD and take a look at the 4-hour chart, okay, we can actually imply when the mean reversion will happen because of this picture that is drawn here. Right? We have the weekly 200 moving average loaded up as the 8,400 moving average. Beautiful. So this mean reversion is implied. Why? Because we're inside an overexpanded band, and it is implied we will revert to the 200 moving average. Well, guess what? This retest happening right there is the same retest on the weekly chart of retesting the bottom edge of the expanding 50 band, right? So if we draw in this line right here and go to the 4-hour chart, guess what happens? It's roughly the same area where the implied mean reversion to the 200 moving average is on the 4-hour chart. So because this price action is implied, and it's the same pivot as the weekly 50, it paints a very probable picture for a bounce at this time, okay? So Bitcoin's going to do something stupid and parabolic in the near future, where we run up, retest, before rejection, additional support on the weekly 200 moving average, which will allow this band to further compress, and as it compresses, we'll get more lateral trading, and this will go into next year, the lateral trading. And when we finally do break up above, that'll be the start of the next bull run for Bitcoin, okay? It's going to be this retest right here, where we break up above the short-term band for new upward expansion. We got a comment here. Hello, why can't we break through the 1.25 standard deviation of the lower weekly band on the very first attempt? Why do you think we'll get a downward rejection? We'll get the downward rejection because we need short-term compression. Think about this in terms of mass. Something with increased mass requires increased force to move. As we shed mass on the shorter distributions, it's going to result in lateral trading. And lateral trading in shorter-term distributions of compression is going to cause the long-term rejections from the midterm downward trending expansions, right? That's why we're going to get the rejection from the weekly 50, which is roughly similar to the daily 200, okay? We can look at it from this perspective as well. So on this daily chart, right, when we re-enter the 50 band, it's implied we'll revert to the 50 mean, and we won't immediately start trending upwards. Why? Because we need to shed mass. So if we're shedding mass, that means we need to trade laterally while the distribution compresses. Okay? Compressing distributions, shedding mass, which allow for less force to push price up in the future. And it makes sense that this would happen at this time because we're directly on top of an institutional benchmark. You don't think we'll go to 1.9K? Not until I see the institutional benchmark of the weekly 200 break. We can also check the monthly chart, okay? And the monthly 50 moving average is another possible place of support. And that's going to be at 3,000, okay? So it's either going to be the weekly 200 to 3,200 or 3,000, the monthly 50. So as far as short-term bottoms go, this looks really good, guys. And if we compare this to previous crash patterns as well, it paints a really nice picture. Okay, NASDAQ composite, let's look at the previous bubble. Oh, shoot. You know what I just realized? Ooh. That's bad. This is really bad. Ooh. We might be entering a long-term crash pattern on the major indices. Can you tell me what's similar about this point right here and this point right here? Go ahead and comment. What is similar about those 2 points? They're the pivots for long-term mean reversion. Okay? When we re-enter an overexpanded band, okay. Actually, there's one major difference here. That's kind of good news, but it still doesn't look good, okay? The difference here is that we're not technically overexpanded. The 50 period is still below the 0.9 value. So that means we're technically not overexpanded, and it doesn't mean we're going to have a full mean inversion. However, it still implies compression. Right, so let's look at this pivot. When we re-enter here, the 50 period on the wave PM starts to compress. However, at this location, we are also not overexpanded. So we're probably just going to see some short-term compression. The major problem with this up here, excuse me, right? Everything was overexpanded for the dot-com bubble, which resulted in all the mean inversions trickling down as we cross the pivots for mean inversion. But the thing is, guys, if we pop over to the Bitcoin chart, right? The same thing happened, right? We cross the pivot for mean inversion, we revert to the mean. Simple as that. As long as the period's overexpanded. So we're actually seeing the same thing, where the pivot for mean inversion is crossed and we revert to the mean. That's what's happened. This is just a little concerning, right? Because the pivot for mean inversion has been crossed, but we're not overexpanded, so it's not the worst case scenario. However, with this new downward expansion here, as long as that 14 period CCI is below the negative 100 value, I would expect a continuous bear market for all the major indices. It does not inspire confidence. Oh, point I was making. Yeah, the 200 is the major institutional benchmark, right? The previous crash pattern for here ended on the 200 monthly moving average. The Bitcoin crash pattern, since it is a more volatile asset class, it would make sense if we ended on the weekly 200 moving average. Right? Looks really good, my friends. So again, retest of the 50 band, further rejection, as we bounce along the 200 moving average, which will allow the 50 distribution to compress. A compressed 50 distribution is good news. Why? Since the longer the 50 distribution compresses, the less force it will be required to drive price up once again, right? So this is the downward expansion, the downward trending. As it finds support on the weekly 200. As we compress, we retest the 50 weekly, further compression. And once we're sufficiently compressed, as soon as we're up above the 50 band, we get upward trending. So that's going to be your pivot point for a long-term bull run on Bitcoin. And you can actually set this alarm. It's going to look like this. Once this alarm goes off, and I very much recommend you do this, this is going to be your holy grail buy signal for Bitcoin. When Bitcoin USD is crossing up Bollinger Band 50 on the weekly chart with the 1.25 standard deviation upper edge. That's going to be your signal for long-term bullishness on Bitcoin, okay? And currently that's very far away. I do feel, oh shit, it really is implied that we're going to get lateral trading up until 2020. I'm not saying we're going to get another year of a bear market. I am saying we're going to get lateral trading for an entire year, right? Since as long as the 50 band has a reading above the 0.7 value, trending is going to be very, very difficult. So I'm actually really looking forward to this following year because trading a range is so much fun. You can make a lot of money trading a range, especially if you're capable of defining the range, right? Although this new bout of overexpansion is not ideal because we're still getting volatility artifacts from the previous overexpansion, right? So that means we're actually below the bottom edge of the 400 period, or 350 it looks like. So if we actually change this to a 350 band, you'll notice something very interesting. And we should be just below the bottom edge of the 350 band, right? Since look at this, as soon as this volatility artifact appears with the cloud, that's actually the exact moment the 350 band once again starts to expand. Very interesting stuff. So what this means is the previous overexpansion of the 350 pin, and it's really nice to see how it provides resistance there. I'd like to think more about that in the future, because that's actually a really interesting pivot. I would actually look at this benchmark, right? Because it's the lowest overexpanded period over here. I don't think it's too relevant, though. I wouldn't bet on it. However, this plume is much more convincing to the 250 period. Right, the 250 period is likely going to be our pivot for rejection. There we go. That looks good. And, ooh, this is really nice. All right, since we enter the 50 band, we'll run up to the 50 moving average, and that's going to be roughly the same point for the pivot of rejection. I like it. It looks really nice. Back to the comments. Uptrend is over, mean reversion imminent. I think you mean the downtrend is over and mean reversion is imminent? Although, technically, ideally, the pivot for mean reversion, at least the one I want, has not been crossed yet. Great days. How you doing, brother? Penn would like me to look at Euro USD. I'd love to. Although, I did a call in the previous live stream. It was AUDCHF. And you can go back and look at this if you like. Right, we said the 75 band would actually be a point of support as it compressed. And there was an excellent opportunity for a long position on this chart. That is perfect, right? Because if we re-enter the longest overexpanded period, we will trade laterally as defined by that period. Lo and behold, guess what we bounced off of? That was an excellent signal. Bounce off the bottom edge of the 75 band. Why? Because the 75 was the longest overexpanded period. And once we entered the 75 band, reversion to the 75 mean was implied. Of course, it looks like it's ending up being a lateral mean reversion. However, if you can define a range, you can trade the range. This bounce right here is very, very nice. And with that same logic, we would not expect price to run up over the top edge of the band. And I'm happy to say that these tools are going to be available within the next few days for individual use. Okay, Euro USD. 1 second. 25 viewers. I really like you guys. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. I actually remembered to announce the live stream today. Yesterday I didn't, and we had like 7 viewers for the first 10 minutes until I remembered. God, I'm making a lot of mistakes here. I should have someone manage this for me. I'm good at technical analysis, guys. That's it. Okay. Waiting for the 3D wave PM to load up. No overexpansions, at least in the short term. This downward move is very interesting, so I want to look at the 15-minute chart. Oh man, that would have been a great long position. Let's look at this. This is exciting. I can't wait for this to load. $200 period. I like it. Let's take a look. Oh, Penn, you did this on purpose, didn't you? You have a really good pivot right here. I like this. Great find, Penn, really. Okay, I tell you what. Since this will typically be the pivot for trending, you can do this, okay? You can enter a short right now because it looks great. And you have a small stop loss right here. And then you can just anticipate a continued downward trend, right? And then if this stop loss triggers, you're going to wait for a 20-period CCI to roll up. And when that happens, you're going to enter a long position up to the target 200 mean. All right, because we will anticipate this to act as a point of rejection, and it looks beautiful. Look how perfectly that pivot holds up. So I would definitely short here. Either anticipate the local low or wait for... How would you take profit on this? You can actually just anticipate sustained downward trending as long as you don't cross this pivot up here. So short position, short term is really nice. I might just call this because it's beautiful. And then if we're up above the pivot, you take a long position. It's really nice. Great find, Pen. I really like this chart. And then let's check higher time frames to make sure anything won't screw this up. Actually, yeah, that's really nice. Because on the 4-hour chart, we're at a pivot as well. We can either get rejected for new sustained downward trending, or the short-term mean reversion will actually pull us back up into the trading range. Great chart. A lot of opportunities here. I really like this. Good find, Ben. What would a dip to 2.5K for a week imply for Bitcoin, as it could still reverse above 3K within the same month, staying above the 50 monthly moving average? Good question. What would it mean? Well, it means that support is broke. And if support is broken, that means I have the sustained downward trend. And if you have a sustained downward trend, you take short positions on the swing highs, and you can define entries into that by looking at CCI roll downs, such as here and here, right? If the downtrend sustains, take short positions. And then if we're actually going to define the new pivot for mean reversion, well, we'll just have to go back to the daily and look at the longest over expanded period, which is going to be, at this moment, about the 250 band, right? And that's going to take a while to actually catch up with price action. So we are still technically in a downward trend, and I'm just anticipating a short bounce up to catch it. If we do continue in a downward trend, okay, fine. Doesn't change that the pivot for mean reversion is going to follow price downwards. Can we look at the XRP call? I missed the chat about it, or is it quite straightforward? Yeah, we can talk about that. I'm talking about Bitcoin. What am I doing? Price volatility will be high at key pivots. Very nice. Let's go to the 4-hour chart. Okay, let's talk about this. This is a pretty straightforward call. We have no volatility overhead. Every wave PM period is below the 0.7 value. That means there's very little mass. If there's little mass, little force is required to move price. So, as soon as this does start trending, it will commit rather significantly in the direction it chooses to trend. Next up, our longest over expanded period was the 220. Okay, so if I load up 220 MA, guess what we're directly on top of? The 220 MA. So if we get our next bout of expansion, since we did just see our full mean reversion, it is implied that we could retest the top edge of the band or even the previous local highs. It's a great chart. Okay, yeah, I'll take a look at the XRP weekly chart. Oops, that's the monthly. I really can't garner all that much information from this. My apologies. Although that's interesting, it is implied that we would bounce off of the 200 weekly, even though it wasn't even aligned. Very curious. But all this compression is really nice for trending. All of this green and blue really does imply that whichever way this starts moving, it's going to continuously trend in that direction. And even if it starts trending in a downward movement, we will be provided with entry positions on CCI rolldowns. It's very nice. Euro USD, I did that already. Also, a look at Ethereum. Yeah, sure. Actually, I had a long-term call on Ethereum USD to $80, and it was considered a typo at the time. It might take a while to find. Just take my word for it. Yeah, FUSD, same pivots for mean reversion implied. Trending is lost steam. I'll do FBTC though. Yeah, very little volatility overhead. I'll tell you what, as soon as this wave PM cross happens, I'd like to see which way this trends. And let's define short-term mean reversion to the 40 MA. That was nice. Actually, that's really funny, right? Look at this, guys. Longest overexpanded period was 40. Guess what happens when you re-enter the 40 band? Price reverts to the 40 MA and trades laterally as defined by the 40 period. And you know what this means? Wow, that's bullish. We have a breakout to the upside from that band. Very nice. We traded laterally as defined by the longest overexpanded period, and now we have upward expansion for that period. Yeah, this is good. You can take a long position here. However, there is no way to take profit at this time, and your risk management is going to be a little funky because you need to wait for a new expansion to occur to actually give you the pivot for mean reversion, right? So you can take a long position here, since there is newer upward expansion on the previous longest overexpanded period. It's very nice. I like it. And then I think you said BNB as well. Yep. Take a look at BNB for you. Totally forgot about this. 80. Yeah, we had an opportunity here. I missed it. Jesus. Support directly on the 80 moving average. Of course. And lateral trading as defined by the 80 band. Look at where that rejection is, guys. Never in my life have I seen a tool so well respected. This is ridiculous. That was so well defined. There's a bit of volatility overhead. Yes, sure, you can enter a long position here. I'll buy. No, that's fine. It's just going to be a 2-to-1 trade, right? 2.5% stop loss. Your upside's going to be 4%. That's not the best trade, but you can do it. And you would be buying the swing high. I guess you want to wait for a retrace to 80 MA before a long position. You can do that as well. It's pretty nice. Can you please post your ideas on Discord in a new channel? That's a pretty good idea. Yeah, I'll do that. Starting tomorrow with my new live streams. Okay, take a look at ADA. Sure thing. Yeah. Import expansion. I don't like this volatility overhead though. There are better charts, but this does look short-term bullish. Let's look at this. Yeah, I expect a 4% run up. Not much else beyond that, though. Not at the moment. At least not until the longer-term pivots for mean inversion have been crossed. All right, that's looking to be around 250. Oh, never mind. Okay. Yeah, I forgot to look at that. No, this looks good. Okay. Let's do this. I want you to load up a 25 period CCI on the 4-hour chart for ADA. And then you're going to create an alarm for the CCI 25 period, crossing up the negative 100 value. There you go. When that alarm triggers, you're going to take a long position on ADA. That's your best bet. Litecoin pumped recently. Yeah, I guess so. Oh, might be a good short opportunity, actually. Not yet, though. Currently, it's only the 40 band. Yep, nothing yet. Although I will keep this on my watch list. There is a pretty good chance for an upcoming short. It's going to be a small short, but it's going to be a good one. And I guess if you just want to try shorting the swing high of this range, sure. Right, what's this over here? 165? No. Try the daily. Okay, good. Yeah, from the daily perspective, I mean, if you just want to simplify this, just wait for a 14-period CCI to roll down for a short position. I might call this, actually. Nice. Yeah, looks good. I'd short this in the near future. I would like to short this. It's a very nice chart. Okay, I'm going to do one more coin and I'm going to be on my way. Yeah, I said EOS short a few days ago, but I didn't get the signal I wanted, so I didn't call it. That's a spooky chart. I don't want this pair. BCH, BTC. Is it BCC? Yeah, it is. Okay. Okay, guess it's Bittrex. I would not play with this. Not at this time. Sorry, folks. I'd leave this alone. Yeah, I'll do Neo because I mentioned that the other day. And that's going to be the last coin I do. Another good chart. I like this one. Right? So we're looking for the 400 period. Ooh, never mind. This might just be the point of rejection. Look at that. That's clean. I wouldn't short here, but I'd keep an eye on it for a bullish move. Nothing yet, though, guys. Keep posted on it, though. All right, folks, this has been a fun live stream. I will talk to you all later. Oh, make sure you do like this video. And remember that I am live every day at 1 p.m. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to be an hour early. I'm going to start tomorrow at 12 p.m. That's going to be it, though, guys. I'll talk to you all later. Dad, check out. I'm pretty sure my hotkeys are broken. Yeah, the hotkeys are definitely broken. Okay. Well, I'll fix that later. See you guys.